Have you ever imagined that during the height of the Cold War, the Soviet Union was secretly building trucks so gigantic and advanced that even today they look more like science fiction than reality? These weren't ordinary machines. They could crush through frozen tundra, glide over icy swamps, transport intercontinental missiles, and even rescue astronauts stranded in the Siberian wilderness. While the rest of the world focused on tanks and jets, Soviet engineers were forging monsters of steel that redefined what a truck could be. So tell me, have you ever heard of these mechanical giants? Or do you just think you have? Because today, we're diving deep into an era when raw power and engineering genius created trucks that seem to bend the laws of physics. The kind of machines that still leave experts speechless. Stay with me till the end, because the number one Soviet truck on this list is beyond anything you've ever seen. KZK 7428. If there's one machine that truly captures the meaning of Soviet overkill, it's the KZK 7428. Built in the 1980s at the KZKT plant in Kurgan, Russia, this steel monster was engineered to haul the heaviest machinery in the Soviet arsenal: tanks, mobile missile platforms, and intercontinental launch systems. For that kind of mission, it couldn't just be powerful, it had to be enormous. The 7428 stretched over 43 feet long, stood nearly 13 feet tall, and spanned 10.5 feet wide. It weighed more than 66,000 pounds empty, yet could tow an unbelievable 150,000 pounds without breaking a sweat. That puts it in the same performance class as mining haulers and industrial locomotives, not regular trucks. Powering this beast was a 40-liter turbocharged V12 diesel engine, yes, 40 liters, delivering roughly 1,000 horsepower and a jaw-dropping 10,000 pound-feet of torque. To put that in perspective, that's enough strength to drag a small naval ship if you somehow gave it wheels. The drivetrain featured 8x8 all-wheel drive, a reinforced suspension, and a semi-automatic heavy-duty transmission built to handle brutal climbs, deep mud, snow-covered tundra, and blistering desert terrain alike. Each tire stood over 5 feet tall, big enough for a full-grown person to vanish behind. And yet, despite its raw strength, the 7428 was designed with precision in mind. It needed to move nuclear-grade cargo across hundreds of miles without shaking or damaging sensitive equipment. Its massive frame absorbed vibration, and its enormous weight kept it firmly planted no matter how rough the journey became. Visually, it was terrifying in the best way possible. The narrow, armored cab had tiny windows, making it look less like a truck and more like a mobile fortress. When its colossal engine roared to life, it didn't just make noise, it made the ground tremble. The deep growl of that V12 echoed like thunder across military bases. Few people realize that the KZKT 7428 wasn't limited to the military. It was also used in extreme civilian operations, from hauling nuclear reactor components to recovering derailed trains stranded in remote, frozen zones. Today, only a handful remain, preserved in military storage yards and museums, relics of an era when engineering wasn't limited by cost, comfort, or logic. This wasn't just a truck. It was the final word in Soviet brute force, a rolling monument to a time when the answer to every challenge was simply, build it bigger. MZKT 7930. The MZKT 7930 stands as the perfect bridge between old-school Soviet power and modern Russian military engineering. Born in the 1990s at the MZKT plant in Belarus, this machine was built to replace aging Cold War giants and carry the next generation of heavy weaponry. And for that mission, it had to be nothing short of massive. Stretching nearly 39 feet long, over 10 feet wide, and standing 11.5 feet tall, the 7930 tips the scales at about 46,000 pounds empty. But here's where things get serious. This beast can haul an additional 53,000 pounds of payload off-road without breaking a sweat. That's more than the total weight of a fully loaded semi-truck, and the MZKT 7930 does it while crossing mud, snow, or sand like it's a paved highway. Under its armored shell, the truck packs a V12 turbocharged diesel engine producing roughly 520 horsepower and massive torque to match. Combined with 8-wheel drive, independent suspension, and multi-axle steering, it moves with a level of control you'd never expect from something so enormous. Despite its size, it can pivot and maneuver like a vehicle half its length, a crucial advantage when hauling missile systems through rough terrain or tight launch zones. Inside, the cab was surprisingly advanced for its time. It offered space for 4 crew members, full air filtration systems for protection in chemical, biological, or nuclear environments, and in many versions, sealed armor protection to withstand battlefield threats. It wasn't just a hauler, it was a mobile command capsule on wheels. But what really turns heads is its appearance when fully equipped. Attach a missile launcher like the Iskander system, and the full setup stretches over 65 feet in length, making it one of the largest wheeled combat vehicles ever built. Watching it unfold into launch position feels like witnessing a mechanical beast awakening, calm, precise, and terrifyingly efficient. Here's a little-known fact. Because of its enormous dimensions, the MZKT 7930 often has to be transported by train to reach deployment zones. And when it does hit the highway, it usually travels in heavily escorted convoys, clearing traffic long before it arrives. Even today, decades after its introduction, the MZKT 7930 remains fully operational in both Russian and Allied militaries. It's one of the most trusted mobile launch platforms ever created, a rolling fortress built to strike hard, move fast, and vanish before the enemy can react. And if you think this is the peak of size and strength, think again. Because the next machine isn't just big, it's the king of all trucks, capable of carrying others on its back and still having room to spare. MAZ 7310. The MAZ 7310 wasn't built to be comfortable, stylish, or practical. It had a single purpose: to carry loads that would make any ordinary truck break down at the mere thought. Unveiled in 1976, this 8-wheeled monster was designed to move the unmovable. It served as a transport platform for ballistic missiles, radar stations, massive fuel tanks, and other oversized equipment that couldn't fit on railways or aircraft. The numbers alone are staggering. Over 36 feet long, nearly 10 feet wide, and towering at 11.5 feet tall. Empty, it weighed around 44,000 pounds, but when fully loaded, it could handle more than 110,000 pounds. That's enough to carry another truck on its back and still keep going. Powering this mechanical titan was the same 38.8-liter V12 diesel engine used in the legendary MAZ 537, delivering over 500 horsepower and mountains of torque. With 8-wheel drive and a torsion bar suspension system, the MAZ 7310 rolled across mud, snow, sand, and frozen tundra like a mobile fortress. It didn't care what stood in its way, it simply crushed through it. But make no mistake, this size wasn't for show. It was necessity. The 7310 often transported nuclear warheads and delicate missile systems across long, unforgiving distances. It had to be stable, reliable, and self-sufficient, capable of operating where no roads existed. Visually, it looked almost surreal. The narrow cab seemed tiny compared to the endless flatbed stretching behind it, as if someone had bolted a small control room onto a steel mountain. And when that V12 roared to life, it didn't just make noise, it shook the ground. Soldiers said they could feel it before they even saw it. Here's something most people don't know. A few MAZ 7310s were later repurposed to transport components of Soviet space rockets. Picture that for a moment, a ground vehicle hauling parts of a satellite launch system through the snow. Only in the Soviet Union could such an idea come to life. Today, very few MAZ 7310s remain in service. Those that do are treated more like mechanical legends than machines. Seeing one up close feels less like looking at a truck and more like standing next to a diesel-powered locomotive on wheels. But believe it or not, this isn't the biggest beast the Soviets ever built. Because up next, we're stepping into something even larger. A vehicle so massive, it looked like a tank factory on wheels. Vityaz D10. The Vityaz DT10 is one of those machines that makes you stop and say, that can't possibly be a truck. And yet, It is. Built in the early 1980s, this Soviet creation wasn't meant for highways or cities. It was engineered for the ends of the earth, places so remote and frozen that even snow hesitates to fall. Think deep Siberia, the Arctic, and even Antarctica. Everything about it was designed for survival in conditions that would destroy ordinary vehicles. The DT-10 is a two-part articulated crawler, stretching over 52 feet long, standing 11.5 feet tall, and nearly 10 feet wide. Empty, it tips the scales at more than 66,000 pounds, yet somehow, it floats across deep snow like it's weightless. Instead of wheels, it moves on massive tank-like tracks, each nearly 30 inches wide, spreading its weight so evenly that it can glide over soft snow, mud, and ice without sinking. The articulation joint between its two halves gives it something almost magical maneuverability. It can twist, turn, and pivot across terrain that would trap even the best off-road vehicles. Under its armored body sits a turbocharged V12 diesel engine, delivering over 500 horsepower and enough torque to haul an incredible 132,000 pounds of cargo, not counting its own bulk. The torsion bar suspension and pressurized shock absorbers were built to survive -50°C temperatures and brutal terrain. Inside, the DT-10 feels more like a mobile base than a truck. The cab is pressurized and heated, with space for 5 crew members. Some versions even came equipped with sleeping quarters, workshops, and scientific research labs, allowing crews to live and operate in the most isolated corners of the planet for weeks at a time. Its reliability and extreme capability made it a legend in polar expeditions, where no other ground vehicle could go. It became equally valuable in Arctic oil and gas operations, carrying heavy supplies and equipment across frozen tundra where normal trucks would freeze solid or sink beneath the snow. And here's a surprising twist: a few of these mechanical beasts were purchased by Russian billionaires, modified with luxurious interiors, satellite systems, and massive fuel tanks for private Arctic adventures. The Vityaz DT-10 isn't just a truck. It's a moving fortress, a machine built to laugh in the face of nature's worst conditions. But if you think this monster is big, wait until you see what comes next. A machine so huge, it could carry another truck on its back and still have room to spare. ZIL 167. If there were an award for the wildest Soviet truck ever built, the ZIL E-167 would easily take the crown. Born in the early 1960s, this monster was designed for one mission: to conquer every terrain imaginable, from frozen Siberian tundra to deep mountain snow. And to do that, it had to be enormous. It stretched over 36 feet long, stood more than 11.5 feet tall, and spanned 10.5 feet wide, larger than most intercity buses. Yet, despite its size, it weighed only 15,400 pounds empty, thanks to the use of lightweight alloys and clever engineering. Power came from two V8 gasoline engines, each producing 180 horsepower for a combined 360 horsepower. Both engines worked together, but if one failed, the other could keep the truck moving, a built-in redundancy that made it almost unstoppable. Then there were the tires, colossal 6.5-foot-tall giants with deep, aggressive treads that clawed through snow, mud, and ice like nothing else on Earth. Each axle featured independent suspension with heavy-duty shocks, letting this behemoth glide over terrain that would bury most vehicles. During testing in the Ural Mountains, the ZIL E-167 powered through blizzards, swamps, and steep climbs, proving its worth in some of the harshest conditions on the planet. And it wasn't just for show. The prototype actually opened routes through parts of Siberia that no motorized vehicle had ever reached before, paving the way for later resource exploration. But despite its success, the project was too expensive and too complex for mass production. Only one prototype was ever built, and it still exists today, proudly displayed at the ZIL Museum in Moscow. Those who've seen it up close say it doesn't look like a truck at all. It looks like a prehistoric steel beast, designed to roam where no man or machine had ever dared. And speaking of beasts, the next one doesn't even have wheels. It rides on tracks, and looks like something straight out of a sci-fi Arctic survival movie. And with that, We wrap up our journey through some of the most outrageous machines the Cold War ever produced. We've walked among giants, machines built to defy logic, conquer the impossible, and push engineering beyond its limits. From amphibious beasts rescuing astronauts in Siberia to colossal trucks hauling nuclear missiles across frozen wastelands, each one was more than metal and gears. They were symbols of power, history, and raw mechanical genius. These weren't just trucks, they were the road itself, carving paths through snow, swamps, and deserts while carrying the weight of nations on their backs. Now tell me, which of these Cold War monsters blew your mind the most? Which would you dare to drive or love to see up close? If you enjoyed this journey through history's greatest machines, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because every week we uncover more mechanical legends that ruled ice, mud, and steel.